Welcome in, gang. Coach, super pumped to have you. So, Coach had enough for a video last night, but wanted to give you a little bit of a break. But it looks like y'all are already chomping at the bit for this one, so I should have just gone ahead and pulled the trigger. Coach kicking himself. But we do have, basically, this is going to now turn into, because Coach got more stuff today, it's going to be like 2 videos in one. Now, the biggest thing, of course, is college football starts Friday. Today's Wednesday. We have until tomorrow at midnight, basically, to put in our college football pick. And that's the shakiest one. We feel pretty solid about NBA and NFL. We just got to hone in a bit more on college football, make sure we repeat our success of last season, maybe take a brief look over at UFL and CFL just for like a minute to try to maybe catch a little clue. But Trevor made some really good points about Sebastian, right? Of course, Coach didn't know much about this mascot, so he really appreciates Trevor's insight here, right? But he says, with Sebastian, it's only the suit. If you search for the Hurricanes mascot, it's an ibis. Yeah, like the logo for sure is not a duck. I do agree with you there. On Wiki or anything else you look up, he's called an ibis. Maybe there's more to it. It was probably just a pain in the ass to have a solid beak that size and that narrow sticking out that far. Now, Coach did assume that as well, but they don't have to have a mascot, right? And, like, why is it even a fucking ibis? You know what I mean? Like, they're the Hurricanes. They could have been any, like, it's so weird that it's something that resembles a duck. Teams change their mascots all the time. They get their ass beat by the Ducks. You never see Sebastian again, right? You know, who knows? But he says he doesn't think he's ever heard anyone call it a duck besides his friends talking shit about. So you have heard people call it a duck because it looks like a fucking duck, right? And, like, think of how much bullshit they could, like, what if Disney, who's right there in Miami, basically, and over in Orlando, what if they sue Miami for the mascot because it looks too much like Donald Duck or some stupid shit, right? So, and then Trevor said, like, you know, it's really hard for teams to repeat. We saw that with Ohio State last year, of course, is our most recent example. Oregon couldn't take care of them twice, and they only barely beat them the first time. Coach thinks that's the bigger tell. Like, yeah, like they talk about how it's hard to beat teams twice and all that sort of stuff, but how much of it is that the teams are very evenly matched? You know, I mean, it's not hard to beat a shitty team twice. Coach thinks it's incredibly easy to beat a shitty team all sorts of times. And in fact, great example for Coach here. Coach played for a soccer team that the year before Coach got there, so he got there his sophomore year, in what would have been his freshman year if he had played there. He would have been the 8th person on the team because that team won the state championship with 7 people. Okay, so Coach would have been a starter by default. The 8th person on the team maybe would have found a way to screw it up, right? But the next year, we had a chance with a better team to go and beat the same team that team beat last year and who we had beaten twice, you know, this year, or move up and play in a double A tournament, right? Like, do we want to beat the single A team that we beat the shit out of and if like completely humiliated, or do we want to maybe give them a chance to get their claim at a single A? We don't feel like we're a true single A team, right? We move up and get our ass kicked by the double A teams, right? So, Coach, it certainly wasn't that we were afraid of beating the same team. You know, teams like the Eagles in the NFL beat teams like the Giants 10 teams in a row. Cleveland can never beat the Steelers. The Steelers probably swept the Browns a billion times, right? So I do understand they make that argument a lot. I think the argument in the NFL is a bit more valid that, like, it's tough to beat. In that, like, I think it's kind of cheating there too, where they talk about how it's tough to beat a team 3 times because you're playing a team 3 times. It means they're a team that was good enough to make the playoffs. Yeah, it's hard to beat a playoff team 3 times, you know? So, then by default here, of course, college football, yeah, it's tough to beat a team twice because it's going to be a playoff team twice. But in more recent history, we have a wider field, okay? So the best should be significantly better than the lower seeds, right? So if you're playing one of those teams that's a lower seed, you probably shouldn't have any problem taking care of them, and that's probably going to be a dummy argument they use to fake you out. Now, all that being said, we're talking about Miami and Oregon here. Miami doesn't feel like a true 10 seed, but we, for all the world, you know, be honest, did anybody anywhere think Miami was still alive when SMU beat them. Coach took the bait full tilt. Like that's their how the hell is Miami gonna bounce back from that? And well, nobody else saw Duke get in that championship either. It's just disgusting, right? So Miami is representing the entire conference, right? Which the ACC purists won't even recognize Miami as an ACC team. That's a Big East team, right? But to the rest of the nation, not being a true ACC thing is a positive because the ACC football is garbage, right? So Miami has a lot more respect as a program than a regular ACC team, certainly a regular 10 seed. So as much as it's easy to dismiss Miami for what's going on right here and now, when you scale back, it's like, man, Miami's been the heel a bunch. They put Doug Flutie over. It's the home of The Rock. It's the home of Jimmy Johnson. The tribute. It just seems like there's so much Miami has to offer that just like Notre Dame and Ohio State in the championship last year, is anybody really even going to talk about the fact that it's an 8 and a 7 seed? But who are we talking about with the repeat here though? Oregon and coach is tripping. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot which teams we were talking about matching up again. Oh, Indiana. So I just think it's a combination of, I think Oregon wins, and they use that trope of it's tough to beat the same team twice in the year. But I think the truth was Oregon was just the better team. I don't know exactly what went down in that first matchup, right? But I don't have any problem believing Oregon's just simply the better team, and that they're going to show up when it matters, hungrier, more desperate, having been so close. Not settling. If they take that national championship last year after that loss, we don't feel they're as hungry. Like, oh, look, they took their participation trophy. They feel like everything's all well and good in the hood. No, I don't feel that way about this Oregon team. I think this Oregon team needs it the most, and that's what scares Coach the most. It's too hard for him to fold that hand. A team like Oklahoma and give you a billion numbers, all that sort of stuff. And I can probably make even more convincing arguments, but it's just who Oregon's football team should be right now is what scares Coach, right? Like when you they seem exactly like the Rams. Like, look, they lost to the team that went and won it all. That who you should instantly look at if you're not taking the team to repeat. Most people use that logic, but they started the championship game. Who'd they beat in the championship? Okay, Notre Dame. That's who's going to repeat. Okay, the Chiefs. That's who's going to come back and win. You know what I mean? But, you got to look the whole way. Every seat, like who gave them the best run? Well, Oregon beat Ohio State. That's why they have a claim at the national championship. So Coach just thinks Oregon's, and I can't stress it enough that Coach always faded Oregon like as a laughable joke. Not as big of a joke as like a TCU or something, but just seemingly like they don't have to play the tough teams. It's such a, seemingly gimmicky style offense. What do you know? Like so many teams have basically copied them, and it's like, is it? I'm so sick of spam calls, yo. So, Coach thinks Oregon does make college football more exciting. A big key would be, they've had the big Under Armour endorsements and, all the different, like, logo combinations, like, over the years. They've always been front and center as far as, like, the branding, right, as far as, like, the trendiest in college football. Not always, but I mean, like, past, like, this millennium. And then with like that area of the country, That's like not too far from like Seattle and stuff, who seems to have like a very similar branding and swag with like the odd color schemes, and they both got like the weird greens in there and stuff, and both birds. So it just seems like people wouldn't question it too much. Like back in the day, I think everybody would have been like WTF, but I think they finally conditioned us to where we would accept Oregon as a champion. Like, oh yeah, it's bound to happen eventually. It's not going to be with Chip Kelly, even though, Chip Kelly just got more legitimized with the championship run last year. It's right. Well, that's who was running that program. I wonder what happened with Oregon, if they were good enough to feel like they could move on from him. Unless they were just complete goobers. Hopefully they're much improved. But over to Mahomes, like, we know about the injury, but they're saying like more than an ACL. So like, yeah, coach already told you he wasn't gonna be ready for the start of the season. So and like they rehab so quickly from like basic little tears or whatever. The coach says this one's gonna be a messy one for sure. He might miss all next season, honestly. Right? If they want to even like have Mahomes as like in the argument of like the Brady treatment, all that sort of stuff, like you kind of want to give him an out to not go under the Browns. The Browns, I think a big clue there is like they lost to Chad Henne. Like if the Browns go against the Chiefs' backup quarterback, nobody's going to assume the Browns are going to win. Right? Like I want to know who, like the Chiefs are a draw. Don't you think somebody who's maybe one of the better backups in the league this year? Like, I don't want to say Kenny Pickett, but like think of like a Kenny Pickett personality, a guy who's like, why am I not starting? Whether he's that good or not, right? There's got to be somebody there who truly believes they should be a starter, and they'll take more money, or they'll take less money for the opportunity to start, right? So Carson Wentz was there before, that's something. There's, you could do Mariota, Cousins, bring Cousins back. There's a ton. I think it's way more interesting that Mahomes isn't there, right? There's so many quarterbacks that aren't really getting their proper shine there. Like Cousins can never be more than a bridge in Atlanta if it's, if for Penix, it seems like Penix has enough heat. They're not, at least not ready to move on like right away, right? So he's got to find somewhere. Right, I think Cousins is the scary one. You put Cousins on that Chiefs team, they're in the playoffs, right? And that's going to have people asking questions about, questioning Mahomes' legacy. He's got to come back and prove this and that, right? And he actually gets them back to the dance, right? We know Cousins can play good in the regular season. I don't think he's going to make some deep Super Bowl run. He's a perfect guy to lose to the Browns, right? So not trying to spend too much time there. LeBron James, ultimate villain. The ultimate villain coach has ever seen in any sport. Okay, he's like basically single-handedly run the NBA. He's destroyed parity. Okay, he has always ring chased. He's never had to suffer through a rebuild. Right, he just goes and basically becomes the GM and spends up all the team's capital to milk as many wins as possible. And he doesn't even like grind it out through the regular season. He takes all sorts of games off, right, resting. And then doesn't do like the dunk competition like so many traditions, right? LeBron has bucked, and like I said, he's a fraud, like with even like the hair, right? Like he can't just be bald like Jordan. He caters to China. Here's just a really random not NBA thing, but coach doesn't want to forget it. Over to the LA Rams. Isn't it interesting? We have a giant Ram crisis going on right now, huh? So yeah, back to LeBron just running everything, right? So everybody's sick of him. He's played so long. He's like buddy with Tom Brady, so it's like he wants to be Tom Brady, but he's not. He doesn't have the skill set to age like a Brady. He's doing everything in his power, I think, artificially. The HGH, all that sort of stuff. He's literally doing everything you could possibly do, load management, etc. Right, to go as long as possible. But coach says he doesn't have the skill set to age gracefully like Brady, because Brady doesn't need to run up and dunk it over you or whatever, right? Like Brady always had to do more with less. You need a guy who couldn't just run and dunk over you. Those guys don't age well, right? Like, so LeBron is a miracle, but he's not like a Brady type, built for the long haul, or maybe a Tiger or a Tyson, right? Any of those guys I can see going forever, not LeBron. You know, the wheels will fall off eventually. The fact he's never had a major setback is, in my opinion, a strike against him. You know, I mean, what happens when that left knee or whatever does finally blow one time? Is he really going to recover like that? You know, he's going to be over. It's done. He's one bad injury away, even though he's never had a bad injury. That's Coach's take. But as far as, you know, like he's just terrorized like the league for so long. A villain that big, you want to be on the biggest stage till the very end, and then him fall like flat on his face. And doing it to Embiid is just picture perfect, in Coach's opinion, right? So why don't I dig the Cavs beating the Lakers? Like, it's just like, you know, I can't get it from like Mitchell and all that sort of stuff. Like, I know people have always been high on them, and I'm not saying he'll never win anything. That team just doesn't do it for me. Like, especially, you know, they weren't even in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Like, that's crazy. And Coach told you who that matchup was going to be. We called Pacers next. We said it going the wrong way. Even though we were super high on the Cavs at the beginning of the season. You know, there's just stuff about it that just began to not quite feel. Without Steph, remember when they got Luke instead of Steph, I was like, okay, it's not the Cavs. That's a big clue. Right? And I think the Cavs winning, like, even if it's I don't know. I guess that is the ultimate ha-ha. So, yeah, I either like Cavs beating Lakers or Sixers beating Lakers. One or the other. But maybe it's just my Sixers fandom bias. I just don't. It's hard for me to believe in the Cavs like that. But we're gonna dig more into them. For sure, Coach just talked himself into it. But, like, okay, let's get over to the Bronny thing. So, Bronny, his son, undersized. They told you he was 6'3", all that sort of stuff. He ends up being, like, 6'1". Now, can you make it in the league at that height? Sure, but who is his dad? The guy who never had to overcome that, right? So, like, Coach sees a lot of, like, Bronny has NBA skills. There are skills he has that are NBA level. They're that of a 2-guard. You know, so at 6'1" is tough, but he could be like a Lou Williams or something. Sure. You know, Coach isn't like super down on Bronny like a lot of other people are. But it does seem like the other end of the spectrum from Shedeur. You know, like Shedeur didn't get drafted to his daddy's team. He didn't, you know, all that sort of stuff. He is taking up a roster spot on an NBA team. You know, in football, you got 50-something players, right? You can bounce around, right? And you do have more roster spots to fill, but the NBA is tight, right? So if you got one guy taking up a 13-man spot or 15 or whatever, you know, it is tough. So, like, that spot, it's more, I think, who could be there, and that would be a more savvy, like, seasoned veteran who has, like, playoff experience, maybe like a Pat Bev or something would be better. And so I don't think Bronny gets like played off the court or anything like that. I think he does basically a Tyronn Lue impersonation on Maxey's Iverson impersonation. And this time, since Iverson has Embiid and Paul George instead of Tyronn Hill and Matt Geiger or whatever the F, you know, bums, they try Eric Snow, you know, McKee probably being the best of the bunch, or Ancient Mutombo, who Nugget, right? And interesting, he's a Nugget. We think the Sixers might be playing the Nuggets for too long. You know, the Sixers are actually well-rounded. Isn't it weird they're not getting, like, you know, if they didn't fall short so many times, they'd be talking about this team like it's like actually a proper big three. It's like, oh, you know, but why are they not? Well, they had Harden, they had Jimmy Butler. Yeah, obvious curses. I don't know what George is. He doesn't feel like a straight-up curse. You know, what's difference, you know, at face value, you know, between him and James Harden, he at least plays defense, right? So George plays some defense. And then versus, you know, you don't have the argument against the other one. I don't know how I lost who it is. Butler. Butler does play defense, right? But he's also got to be a straight-up alpha. Paul George never even struck me as like a true alpha, right? He always seemed more like he could, more malleable, right? Like he could fit more championship contenders and stuff. And a big part of his I'd say lack of success so far is I'd have to go back and actually look at everywhere like he landed, but he doesn't smell like a big ring chaser to me. I feel like he always was probably elevated. Like he probably isn't a true number one. He was probably asked to be a number one or a number two. Like he probably is best served as a proper number three, and he can't possibly be a worse third than Tobias Harris. I couldn't stand that guy. Right, so coach is very excited about the potential. Indiana was just in the finals, so he could get his revenge. There's a lot to like coach thinks about Paul George versus anybody else the Sixers have had there in the post-process era. Or even in the Iverson era. This is, we're talking, you got to go back a long, long time. And I'm thinking probably McGinnis, Dr. J, and like Chamberlain, or Malone, not Chamberlain, right? Malone, Dr. J, and like McGinnis on a team together. McGinnis, interesting. He is a Pacer too. I think you got to go back to those three probably to find a Sixers group this well-rounded. And I hadn't actually even really thought about it like that till just now. So, and of course, Iverson, Maxey, Bronny, all guys got to overcome size. Lou, why did LeBron want Tyronn Lue as his coach? Why is he not the coach there? Why is it Redick, who was a Sixer, and Tyronn Lue's on the other LA team, right, with Harden? There's a lot of weirdness. I can't believe this is like the whole meat of the episode, to be honest with you. I was going to lead with this. Not Gary Payton Jr. necessarily. The coach was planning on naming this, and I just forgot because I started riffing. I was going to name this video Sean Walter Payton. Oh my gosh. Sean Walter Payton Manningham. Payton spelled with an A, not an E. Sean Walter Payton Manningham. So let's talk about it. So, why the hell is Sean Payton coaching the Broncos? Right? One, Sean Payton and Peyton Manning. It's funny just because it's both Paytons, right? I don't even have to tell you any of the lore, right? But who is Sean Payton? Oh, what do you know? That's the guy Peyton Manning went against in the Super Bowl. He beat Sean Payton beat Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl with the Saints. Who are the Saints? Well, Archie Manning's team, right? Who's the other team Peyton Manning faced in the Super Bowl? Well, of course he beats the Bears, Walter Payton's Bears. You think they're going to pass that up? Right? So Sean Payton and Peyton Manning can team up on a team Peyton Manning already won the Super Bowl for. Right? And who does Peyton Manning's brother, what does he do? He plays Eli Manning, teammates with Manningham, Mario Manningham. Right? So Manning to Manningham. Of course, you got some goofiness there, and that's who beats Brady, right? So you get two Mannings. I wonder if Mario Manningham was Peyton Manning, right? But so you got Gary Dwayne Payton Jr. Of course, Dwayne reminds coach of like Dwayne Wade. But Gary Payton was the glove. He played for the Supersonics. The Thunder just won the finals. Bronny's like player comparison is that of like a Gary Payton Jr. because they're both like defensive specialists, right? Very interesting to coach. Gary Payton Jr.'s nickname is the Mitten. Okay, Young Glove or the Mitten. Michigan, the Mitten State. Very odd, right? So, thought that was funny. And someone talked about his name Falk. Coach thought that was odd. We got the Rams winning it. But yeah, so here's Sean Payton, Sean Payton, like Tom Patrick Brady or Patrick Edward. I can't remember. Right? We know there's a billion Patricks. The Italian, I just can't remember which way now for some reason. So Sean Payton here, first stop ever in career, San Diego State, the fucking Aztecs. Right, and coach told you that's the team in any given Sunday. I really think we're about to get some expansion NFL team called the Aztecs. Albuquerque probably, or something bizarre. Right, that you just wouldn't think of that half makes sense. I mean, Breaking Bad was in Albuquerque. There's reasons to think it could be over enough. Right, so at least when, Bugs Bunny hyped it up forever. They could finally get something. Why has Albuquerque always gotten snubbed? City we've all heard of that has absolutely nothing to offer, pretty much. So let's see. Oh yeah, isn't it interesting? Your boy here, Sean Payton, who's a freaking Super Bowl champion. He was only coach of the year one time, but Stefanski's rocking around with two of them. How the fuck does that work? Second longest tenure behind Bill Belichick, so he had to get fired so that Belichick could keep that record. I'd say Andy Reid's probably like right behind and Cower somewhere in there. He was on a flight during like the 9/11 garbage. Oh, this was weird. Okay, so yeah, check it out. So Sean Payton coached up Drew Bledsoe. Of course, Drew Bledsoe gets injured, so Tom Brady can get in, right? So you got Drew Bledsoe and Sean Payton. So there's like your Peyton Manning, Tom Brady thing again. Drew Bledsoe, he goes on to coach Drew Brees, right? Who like was like Tom Brady's like player comparison or whatever. Like, hopefully he can be it. We don't think he'll be as good as Drew Brees, blah blah. Right, both play for like a billion years. Saints with Sean Payton, right? Of course, that's who beat Peyton Manning. It's Drew Brees. Let's see, and of course it was like right after Katrina. Jimmy Graham, it's like Otto Graham. The Lions are the ones that exposed the Saints bounty program. So that's interesting to coach. Saints running back Reggie Bush. So the Rams. Oh shit, dude, are you seeing that? I didn't remember that. The Rams are the ones that ended the Super Bowl repeat for the Eagles the last time. That's not bad, right? Oh boy. That's really nice. Okay. Dolphins were considering pairing Sean Payton with Tom Brady. Ha ha ha. Had to. Got to sneak that in somewhere. So we got the young Dolphins. The young Dolphs for us. Like they had the Russell Wilson thing, of course. Payton became just the 8th coach in NFL history to defeat all 32 teams in the league. He's with Ed Orgeron. Tell me that doesn't make you think Oregon. Right, so Orgeron. I know, that's probably not his spot. But he's got the Saints on there. Syracuse is interesting. Wilson Rutherford Bud Schwank Jr. So it is with a heavy heart. Coach is here to inform you that Terrence Bud Crawford has stepped away from boxing and is retiring. It is very mixed emotions from Coach. At first, it's I got the doubt. I never fully believe he's stepping away, but let's just assume Terrence Crawford is actually retiring. There has been no one athlete in Coach's entire life who, from start to finish, backed up every single claim I ever made about them. So to the character of Terrence Bud Crawford, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the most validating sports experience, especially for it being such a long ride. I imagine this is probably what a lifelong Tom Brady fan would feel like or something, right? Like everybody wanted to talk crap. People literally laughed like, who the hell, you like who? Right? Going out at the very, very top. Coach thinks he's going to come back, probably lose to Tyson or something like that, right? But he already called it quits. He knew he was done. His excuse was he wasn't staying. He got soft. He didn't stay. hard he's going to be, like in Tyson's limbo, where he was in the face of losing to bums. Right, so that's going to be Bud's excuse. Right, so that's Coach's big Crawford rant. Just, it's weird that it can all go down like that, and it's like, oh, well, everything's still the same. Right, so that's basically what you need to understand is, even if like every single thing goes right all the time, like nothing's going to change, right? It's just always going to be on to the next one. It's always, okay, who's the next Terrence Crawford? Who's going to knock? Who's, okay, they say he's gone. Who's actually, so Terrence made it as clear to Coach as possible. Also, not that he might not be entirely done winning. I don't think he comes out of retirement like just to lose necessarily. But we officially no longer need anything from him. I will never ask another thing of Crawford. I may say he may win or something like that, but Crawford officially owes Coach nothing, right? So he's pretty much dead to Coach, except for what little parts he may play to put the other characters over. So it's weird that chapter is officially closed. It's also weird it lasted so long. I mean, we're talking over a decade of Coach's life. I'm pretty sure like 12 years, if I had to put it right on the nose, that Coach was obsessed with Terrence Crawford. So, of course, Omaha guy, there has been a lot of weird Nebraska stuff pop up. I don't know how they're going to tie in any way, right? But something to think about. But Rutherford Bud, that's a Rutherford B, like Rutherford B. Hayes, right? Wilson, we just talked about Russell Wilson a second ago. This guy is who Peyton Manning broke the record for interceptions, right? So Peyton Manning broke the rookie record for interceptions. Coach thinks if Cam Ward doesn't break it this year or something like that, somebody's going to break it next year. I don't think anybody's on pace to break it, or we would have heard about it, right? But I'd like to see our rookie quarterback come in and break the interception record next year. That'd be fun. There's all sorts of teams it could happen for, like the Cards. Arch Manning's coming in. Arch Manning's coming in. You think he's going to break Peyton Manning's interception rookie record after he struggled to start this college season? So, yeah, Arch Manning gonna break Peyton Manning's interception rookie record. So he's the only one that's got the reputation to not get fucking benched for pulling some shit like that. Okay? He's the only one that's going to be able to get the chance to break that record. So keep an eye on that. No, wherever he ends. And, I'll bet the Colts could use a quarterback. You think they're not, there's no way in hell they move on from Daniel Jones? You think Arch Manning ends up on the Colts after you make up for Peyton Manning bouncing their ass out of the playoffs? Actually, they're probably not going to have the firepower. Bill Belichick was supposed to get Peyton Manning on the Jets. Sorry, Arch. Sorry, buddy. Good luck throwing pick sixes in New Jersey next year. That's what's going on for sure. Okay, so isn't it interesting, though? This guy, Peyton Manning, broke the record for. He was a fucking Brownies quarterback. Baltimore Colts. Browns go to the Baltimore, blah, blah, blah. Yankees. Browns are the new Yankees. Of course, how do you end up on the fucking Yankees? Come on, man. Come on. I know that's probably... I think it actually even was the baseball one, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to look for sure, because I know I kept it. No. Wait. Before leaving professional football. Okay, so it was the football Yankees. But still, that's right around the time they would have stopped being the football Yankees. So, just snuck it in there. The Washington Bears. That sounds weird, doesn't it? That doesn't sound good at all. The Washington Bears. Okay, we talked about how Coach predicted the Mendoza Heisman because of Fernando Valenzuela. Well, in case you needed to know to look to baseball and find out who the big Fernando in baseball is and blah, blah, blah. Well, here is your other big clue. His last name, the Mendoza line, is a baseball term, right? The basically saying a player bats over 200. So, I know I had stuff to talk about, but I honestly don't care too much. He did have, some notable thing against the Dodgers and like the ALCS or NLCS, something like that. And had some Hawaii connection. Here's Mario Manningham for you. Mario Cashmere. God, how tacky, right? So Cashmere caught he caught the pass that put them in field goal range to beat Brady. Not the crazy one off the helmet. Oh, what do you know? Played for Michigan from Warren, Ohio. Warren G. Harding, Ohio. Who did Coach say Warren G. was? Oh, is that Shady? Okay. Coach has to keep that more at the forefront of his mind when he's looking at some of these guys, because Warren G. actually comes up a surprising amount. So, Coach, tiny clarification. Coach, in the previous video, said the Rams won in 2002. 2002 is when they lost to the Patriots. Coach says that's just as good for us. And would further explain why the Angels didn't win in 2022 and why they could win this year instead. And there's your Rex Grossman BS Super Bowl loss to the Dolphins. Sorry, not Dolphins. It was in Miami, so I got thrown off to the Colts. Peyton Manning. That's who mattered there. Over with Sebastian's, because Sebastian, the not duck, the ibis, like ISIS, I guess. I don't know. Sebastian Pavel Janikowski. This dude, boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. So, one, he was on the team that started the tuck rule against Brady. Right? That's something. But this man attempted a 76-yard field goal. Wonder if the Sixers are good for it. Justin Tucker, of course, goes on to break that record with the tuck roll, and Justin Tucker. They just can't get enough of the Tuck Everlastings, the everlasting Tucks, the old nip Tucks. He has the longest overtime field goal ever. And look, that 76-yarder, September 28, 2008, 28-208. Sebastian Telfair, boy, is this a tough one. He's played for anybody and everybody. Coach followed his whole career because he was so interesting to coach, being like undersized, more of a ball handler and distributor, not so much a shooter. Right, straight, one of the few guards that like goes straight from high school. He was supposed to be with Rick Pitino. Right, Coach wanted to see what ended up with him, being the cousin of NBA player Stephon Marbury. But Telfair always had a very entitled attitude. He didn't seem like a hard worker. He always seemed very unsure of himself, right, and like not a fun teammate to play with. Right, so he bounced around the entire league. So it's tough to get a read on how he ties in. So let's look over at Stephon Xavier Marbury. Right, so Marbury, Yellow Jacket, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets just won the Super Bowl. And he happened to play for the Beijing Ducks, which I thought was really weird. Shoe gang. I'll bet that's a joke, right? Because they're the shoe cartel. That's where we buy all our shoes from, right? Oh, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure we got to that one. We did all that. There's Brady with LeBron. This cat's got to be tying in hard. Somehow, I'm thinking like next year, Tucker, John Kraft. You got Tucker and Kraft. There's no way this guy's not going against like the Patriots or the Raiders. Or he's gonna. You want this guy on your team. I don't know when, but locking him down for the long term probably not a bad idea. He's gonna be at least involved in some meaningful playoff matchups that have implications on like NBA or NFL history going forward, right? Maybe he doesn't. And the fact he's a Packer right now, and we think they might be popping up to win it next year, not bad. Just saying. Let's see. He was a national champion too, so he knows how to win. But yeah, he just tore his ACL, so he's got to. Wait, what was that? He caught 2 touchdowns on National Tight Ends Day. That's not bad. Res Dog. Married to Bailey. God, what? That's so Bailey, Champ Bailey. Bailey's Broncos, Packers. That's got to be what that joke is, right? The Broncos, Packers. Super Bowl thing. Are they doing a fake out with Rodgers? Is it the Steelers losing the AFC Championship? Or, yeah, they lose the AFC Championship. Oh, is that them finally beating Denver? And they hype up that it's a rematch of the... Yeah, they're doing one or the other next year. Coach is pretty... not next year, year after, I guess. Right, so after, assuming we still got our Lions, Browns going down. Coach thinks they're going to go with... Man, maybe we're not looking at next year for that. That's stuff to worry about more in the offseason. But Coach thinks next year we're either looking at Lions over Browns or one of two, Packers beating the Steelers or beating the Broncos. Tough to say. Maybe, yeah, and that could be Knicks' first Super Bowl loss. Elway lost a bunch of them. Tough to say. I've been hearing a lot of players just randomly say the word process. You kind of always do. But Phillip Rivers specifically saying he loves the process more than football stood out to Coach. This one's kind of weird. Hold on. So in the movie Big Daddy, remember when the kid wants to put the Kangaroo song on? It's because Adam Sandler, the reason Adam Sandler doesn't want to put the Kangaroo song on is because he's watching the NHL. There's a penalty shot in overtime, I think is what he's saying, right? And he's like, this happens like once every 10 years or something like that, right? And the kid just screams at him Kangaroo song until like he has to put it on or whatever. But I thought it was very interesting that the Mighty Ducks, right, the movie, you got Charlie Conway with a pair of penalty shots. Does he miss the first one? He makes the second one. Gordon Bombay tells him his struggles with his penalty shot, or, quarter advantage one way or the other, blah, blah. And then the Mighty Ducks, the actual team, they come in and when they win, I'm pretty sure they won the national championship. Or I'm pretty sure they won the Stanley Cup, right? But it was either when they won the Stanley Cup or they lost or whatever, but it was because I'm pretty sure they lost on a penalty shot and then came back in real life, just like in the movie, right? Like they literally set it up almost the exact same way. Well, Coach's point with Big Daddy here is, isn't it interesting that he talks about that super rare play in sports that I don't think we've heard referenced in any other movie ever. And in that same movie, the whole premise of the movie is this bastard child that is a product of a Blue Jays World Series. Right? We had the Blue Jays lose the World Series. So that seems very, very odd to Coach. And then in the movie, the Jets are really, really bad. Right, not like you need that, but it's nice. It's not like I have to be like, oh, but we gotta find a way to make the Jets good. No, Arch Manning can just come and throw a bunch of interceptions and we can go to the goddamn Jets. Right, so Big Daddy, Coach already told you about Big Daddy Lipscomb, okay, who happened to be from Detroit and an LA Ram, Baltimore Colt, Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are teams we really want to see, on the list, right? Sack leader. This was the guy I told you about where his mom was schmabbed a ton of times, right? And he ended up ODing on Schmeroin, right? But so his equivalent, waiver wire equivalent to 1157, 1957, that's when He had his best year in his hometown Detroit team, won the championship. Buzz Nutter. So here's another Big Daddy who happened to be Ohio State Buckeye, right, from Ohio, age 52 right now in the year 2025. Let's see, along with running back Marshall Faulk, very first thing to tell you about him, right? Look out for Marshall Faulk. So very interesting. Chung. It's like Patrick Chung makes coach think of the Patriots. Russell Maryland's popped up like 100,000 times this year. They're doing something with him. I don't know what I had there. Let's just go to something grabs coach. Okay, and so coach talked about the Ram crisis. They're like ASUS. I think ASUS is going to have a big scandal. I mean, Sauce is right there in the thing. The Ducks are one of only 3 20-win teams in the conference. Look out. Coach instantly thought what stands out more than anything. So coach isn't some huge hockey head. He can't give you the ins and outs, what's going on with their players or their coaches or whatever. He's got to give you the most casual take he could give you. And it's living through the Mighty Ducks, having to hear what other people, criticized, whatever. The thing that stands out about the Ducks is the logo. Right? It's like, oh, it's so cartoony. It's not gritty like the Devils or all the other logos. It was the first colorful one. Specifically, the term used was, unlike the other gritty uniforms. Right? So gritty does not get thrown around a lot in Coach's opinion. Like, you hear it somewhat. It's not a huge term. Right? But the Flyers happen to have a mascot named Gritty. And I'm pretty sure, I didn't double check. Like I said, coach doesn't know a lot about hockey. I should probably make sure they're not in the same conference before I talk about this. Thank God. Okay, so coach isn't a complete moron. The Flyers are in the Eastern Conference, I assume, because they're on the East Coast. And what do you know? Philly just won the Super Bowl. The Sixers maybe winning an NBA Finals. And that Flyers team is hella cursed. Real good for popping up in the finals and losing. And that would be at the exact same time the Sixers were winning. So you could have the Ducks sweep the Flyers. Or if it's not a sweep, it's at least you somehow know it's over after 2 or 3 games. Philly has home ice and just blows the first 2 games. You just know they're toast. Like maybe they stick around a little bit, but it's either a gentleman's sweep or they do something in game 5 to where they're going to lose in game 6. Some injury excuse, something to where you're super depressed about them. Well, you instantly get happy over the Sixers. Right? So coach thinks that's what they're cooking up there. Super loose with that one, right? Don't kill coach if the Flyers don't pop up. That's just the best he can give you. Okay? Because like you said, this is his weakest area as far as the Big Four. I'd put baseball third. But we've had a lot more success with baseball than hockey. We haven't tried hockey, really. And coach was right with the Penguins. Pretty much right on time. Just didn't need anybody else since then. It's the only team I really cared about. So they had a big trade. The Flyers and the Ducks, they did a big swap. Flyers fans apparently not very happy about it. They did a big joke here. Hold on. I should have gone slower. Okay, here we go. So the Flyers just get a guy from Boston College out of this deal, right? So they get an Eagle, Philadelphia Eagle in the house, right? And then who do the Who else was involved? Alex Lyon of the Red Wings. What do you know? Like Detroit Lions. Haha. They had a lot of fun with that one. Try not to cry, but yep, it's possibly over at 38. I don't think he's retiring as much as he doesn't have anything else to prove until there's something to prove. So give him something to prove, he'll prove it. Victor Wembanyama likes ethical basketball. It's hard to find this guy as a heel. Right, so coach thinks he's like the big NBA reset. He probably stays with the Spurs his whole career like Tim Duncan or whatever, right? He's a big palate cleanser to this LeBron bullshit. The Ram crisis just got worse, blah, blah, blah. This is really something, dude. Garrett Dellinger, dude, you're getting Adele. Adele like the singer, right? So, Garrett Dellinger. Garrett like Myles Garrett. He was released by the Browns because the word on the street is they thought they'd be able to step